Good morning and welcome to Barbaras Bulletin. I'm your host, Barbara. Today we're starting with a developing story from the Middle East, where tensions continue to escalate in Yemen. Reports have emerged that Iranian-backed Houthis have detained 9 more employees of the United Nations, bringing the total number of detained UN workers in Houthi-held territories to 53 since 2021. According to the UN, these detentions are part of a long-running crackdown on the organization by the Houthis, who have been at odds with the internationally recognized government in Yemen for years. The conflict has led to a humanitarian crisis, with millions of people in need of aid and assistance. The UN has called for the immediate and unconditional release of all detained personnel, emphasizing that they must be respected and protected under international law. However, the Houthis have accused some UN staff members of being involved in espionage activities, which they claim justifies their actions. It's a complex and sensitive situation, with multiple parties involved and different perspectives on the issue. As we delve into this story further, it's essential to consider all sides and strive for a balanced understanding of the events unfolding in Yemen. We'll continue to monitor this developing story and provide updates as more information becomes available. In the meantime, let's take a closer look at the broader context of the conflict in Yemen and its implications for regional stability. The situation in Yemen is just one example of the many challenges facing the international community today. As we explore these issues on Barbaras Bulletin, our goal is to provide you with accurate, unbiased information and insightful analysis. We'll be right back with more of today's top news on Barbaras Bulletin. Welcome back to Barbaras Bulletin. We're glad you're still with us as we dive into the latest developments in international news. Today, we're focusing on the European Union's efforts to restrict the travel of Russian diplomats within the bloc. As reported by several sources including the Financial Times and the Moscow Times, EU member states have agreed to implement new restrictions on the movement of Russian diplomats, citing concerns over suspected espionage and sabotage operations. Under these new rules, Russian diplomats based in EU capitals will need to notify their host governments in advance if they plan to travel outside their country of accreditation. This move comes amid growing tensions between the EU and Russia, particularly in light of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. European intelligence agencies have blamed Russia for a rise in suspected sabotage operations, including arson, cyber attacks, and infrastructure damage. By restricting the movement of Russian diplomats, the EU aims to make it more difficult for suspected spies to operate undetected within the bloc. It's worth noting that not all EU member states were initially on board with these restrictions. Hungary, for example, had previously opposed the move, but has now reportedly dropped its objections. The Czech Republic, on the other hand, has been a strong advocate for restricting the movement of Russian diplomats, with its foreign minister, Jan Lipavsky, arguing that Russian diplomats should not enjoy unrestricted access to the bloc's open borders area. The implementation of these restrictions is part of a broader sanctions package against Russia, which also includes measures such as banning Russian aluminum imports and restricting the sale of gaming consoles. However, the package still faces potential delays due to disagreements over Austria's Raiffeisenbank International, which has sought to recover damages it paid in Russian courts. As we consider these developments, it's essential to remember that the situation is complex and multifaceted. While the EU's concerns about Russian espionage and sabotage are legitimate, it's also important to recognize the potential impact of these restrictions on diplomatic relations between the EU and Russia. We'll continue to monitor this story and provide updates as more information becomes available. In the meantime, we want to hear from you. What do you think about the EU's decision to restrict the travel of Russian diplomats? Do you think it's a necessary measure to ensure security, or could it have unintended consequences? Stay tuned for our final story of the day, right here on Barbaras Bulletin. Welcome back to Barbaras Bulletin. We're wrapping up today's show with a look at the ongoing debate surrounding the deployment of National Guard troops to various cities across the United States. The Trump administration has been pushing for the deployment of these troops to address civil unrest and protests, but many have raised concerns about the potential infringement on states' rights and the use of military force in domestic law enforcement. Recently, a federal judge in California temporarily blocked the deployment of National Guard troops from Texas and California to Portland, Oregon, citing concerns about the administration's authority to make such a move. This decision comes after another judge in Oregon made a similar ruling, barring the deployment of troops from that state. The issue has sparked a heated debate about the role of the federal government in addressing domestic unrest and the limits of presidential power. Some argue that the Insurrection Act, which allows the president to deploy troops domestically in certain circumstances, could be used to justify such deployments. However, others contend that this would be an overreach of executive authority and could lead to a dangerous escalation of tensions. As the situation continues to unfold, it's clear that the courts will play a crucial role in determining the boundaries of presidential power and the use of military force in domestic law enforcement. The Supreme Court may ultimately have to weigh in on this issue, providing clarity on what circumstances justify military intervention in American cities. It's essential to approach this topic with nuance and balance, recognizing the complexities and competing interests at play. As we navigate these challenging times, it's crucial to prioritize open dialogue, critical thinking, and a commitment to upholding the principles of democracy and the rule of law. That's all for today's Barbaras Bulletin. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, stay engaged.